Okay, so we started looking at this game yesterday, and again, it's just a simple laser blast game. Now, if we think about what it would take to program this, I've got 5 aliens. So I would need 5 sets of variables, one for each alien, plus I would need all of those if statements to determine whether I hit each one. But as it turns out, computers are really good at repetition. And so we're going to use some of that power because here, watch this. We see this line 3 where it says sphere number. If I change this to 15, now I would need an additional 10 sets of if statements to determine if I hit the ships, right? But as it turns out, I don't. So I'm going to go here. Look at that. Now I have 15 aliens, and I'm just blasting away. And all I had to do was change that one number. Pretty cool, eh? So we can track any number of objects by using something called arrays. Now, we're going to kind of build this idea over time. But for now, just so you know, right here, when we look at lines 1 and 2, we're creating a variable called sphere x and sphere y. And we set it equal to these square brackets. All right, that is telling it to create an array. And then we, in our setup right here, we are filling the arrays. Okay, now, what exactly does that mean? If we think about a variable, let's say I create a variable, I'd write let x, and I get it, say 7. It's kind of like I've created a bucket, and I've written x on it, and I put a 7 inside that bucket. And that bucket can hold one thing at a time, okay? So if I want to change that, I take the 7 out, and I put something else in, right? But I can only hold one thing. What an array is like a whole, like, you know those things that you put pills in, one for each day, and it's got the little chambers here with a, so this is kind of like a bunch of these things hooked together, and I call this whole thing, and I can put different numbers into each of these cells, okay? And I can have as many cells as I want, and a different number can be held in each of those. So far, so good. So if I want to increase the value of one of them, I just have to tell it which cell I'm looking at. And the cells are numbered, which is how I can tell which one is which. The first cell is 0. I know, confusing. It'd be convenient if the first cell was 1, but it's not. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So all of the cells are numbered. So far, so good. All right. Now, to access one of them, if I wanted to access, say, this one, I would write sphere x bracket 1. And that would give me that second element. If I wanted the first element, sphere x bracket 0. So far, so good. Now, in the rest of my program, you will never see sphere x or sphere y all by itself. It'll always be followed by the square brackets with something in it. So far, so good? All right. Now, when I deal with this, I'm going to use this thing here, which is called a loop. And this loop says start at 0 and keep going until I get to sphere number. So in this case, that's 15. So this value of I is going to change each time through this loop. So this for loop will run a limited number of times. You know how draw loops over and over and over and over again 60 times a second? The for loop will loop however many times we tell it to. So if we start at 0 and we continue to 15, we're going to loop 15 times. So I will have a value of 0, then it'll be 1, then a 2, and 3, and so on. Okay? Now, we're going to build more on this concept over the next few days, okay? So I just wanted to give you just enough so that you could go in and add your sprites. So right now, your task today is to take this code and you're going to add your sprites. You're not going to change much of my code. You with me? You'll need to create, like you do, variables. So you'll need a variable name for each of your sprites. In your setup or in a preload function, you'll need to load your images, and then you'll need to use them. All right, so let's scroll down and take a look at the structure of my program real quick together. We have function draw, and then we either call start screen or run game. Oh, you can also make my start screen better, okay? So you should improve on my start screen. And then you should add the sprites. And then we look at the the run game function that is called by draw, and we can see draw spheres, move spheres, check shoot, and check. All right, so let's take a look at draw screen. Inside of draw screen, this is where we update everything that's on the screen each frame. So we have our background, our draw spheres, which are our aliens, and our draw ship, which is our ship. So if we look down just a little bit, we can find here's our draw spheres and our draw ship. I'm going to look at draw ship real quick. So you're going to be editing for sure line 75. Now here's the thing. You're not going to change much of my code. You with me? You'll add code, but you're not going to change much of my code. So today I'm asking you to change 2 of my lines and add some lines. You with me? You're going to change only 2 lines in my code, and then you'll add some lines. All right, so line 75 here, and again, once you start adding code, it might not be 75. So line 75 is where I'm drawing my ship, and right now I'm drawing a triangle. And I'm giving it coordinates, mouse x, comma, height, minus 50. Now, what does height minus 50 means? Well, height is a special variable that tells us the entire height of our canvas. So that's what height is. So if I change the height of my canvas, the ship will always be down at the bottom. And it'll always be 50 from the bottom. You with me? So this point is mouse x minus 12, comma, height minus 26. So this is 26 from the bottom. And this is 50 from the bottom. Does that make sense? So that height is kind of cool. So let me clear this off and I'll show you what I'm talking about. There we go. So if I go back to the top of my program and I change my canvas, right now in my setup, my canvas is 620 tall. If I make this 420 tall, it'll be flatter. And when I start, you'll see my ship is still on the screen, exactly the same distance from the bottom, right? So if I make this 500, same thing's going to happen. The ship will still be perfectly 50 from the bottom of the screen. So anyway, that's why I used height there. So what you're going to do is you're going to replace line 75 with your call to the image function to draw your rocket ship or whatever you chose to make for that. And then for your draw spheres, line 67 here is where I'm drawing the alien ships. You with me? So this is the x coordinate, and this is the y coordinate. So you're going to need to use these. You with me? And then you can see I set the sphere diameter here and here. And I did that up at the top. You can see I set the sphere diameter as 25. And go ahead and make this 5 aliens again. So if I make my aliens bigger, I can do that right here, and they'll automatically get bigger. And then my if statements that I use to see if I hit it, I also use that sphere diameter variable. That way I can make sure I absolutely hit it. All right, so that's why I used that sphere diameter. So in your in your code here, there we go, line 67, you're going to be changing line 67 into an image function. And remember that when you draw an image, it is drawn from this top left corner. And when you draw a sphere, it is drawn from the center point. So you might need to move your image. So this is your X and Y are probably not going to be just X and Y. You're going to have to take away some to move it up and to the left so it matches where it is right now. Anyway, so your task today basically is to import your sprites that you created yesterday into P5, create image variables, load the images into them, and then change lines 67 and 75. All right. Now, again, they're my 67 and 75, but they're going to shift once you start working. Okay. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead right now, and I'm going to go ahead and add a comment line. So they're not going to be exactly 67 and 75. There we go. I got comment lines in there so you know exactly where to go. So that's where you're going to add those sprites. So once you get those done, if you have a little time, make my start screen better. All right, and then we're going to play more with modifying code and understanding how it works over the rest of the week.